The stars above the campsite blinked in a pattern that resembled Morse code. At first, it felt like a trick of fatigue, the mind inventing rhythm where none existed. Rowan lay on his back atop the thin foam pad, breath drifting out in pale clouds that vanished almost immediately into the cold. The forest canopy framed the sky like a torn curtain, black branches clawing at a scatter of stars that seemed unnaturally sharp tonight. The fire nearby burned low, logs popping softly, each crackle echoing a little too clearly in the surrounding silence. Blink, 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 blink. Rowan frowned. His eyes tracked the same cluster again, just above the crooked silhouette of the ridge. The pattern repeated, measured, intentional, not twinkling, not drifting. "Elise," he said quietly, "are you seeing this?" Across the fire, Elise paused mid-motion, her fingers stilling on the strap of her backpack. "Seeing what?" "The stars," Rowan replied. He sat up slowly, suddenly aware of how cold the air felt against his cheeks. "That group there, they're flashing." Elise followed his gaze. The ridge cut the sky like a saw blade, darker than the dark behind it. Above it, a loose scattering of stars blinked out of sequence, their light switching on and off with unsettling precision. "I don't think so," she said after a moment, though her brow creased. "They look normal to me." Blink, 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 blink. Theo, crouched near the fire with his hands extended toward the heat, tilted his head back. The flames reflected faintly in his eyes before he squinted up at the sky. "No," he said slowly. "Rowan's right. That's not normal." They fell silent, watching. The fire hissed as sap bubbled from a log. Smoke curled upward, carrying the sharp scent of pine and damp soil. Somewhere beyond the reach of the firelight, leaves whispered against one another, then stilled, as if whatever had moved realized it was being listened for. The blinking continued. There was a cadence to it, a repeating structure that made Rowan's skin prickle. It reminded him of a signal, like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. "Satellites," Elise offered, though she didn't sound convinced. "They don't do that," Rowan said. "They don't stop and start." Theo's hands lowered slowly from the fire. "It's Morse code," he said. Elise let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "You're kidding." Theo shook his head. "My aunt taught me. She was big into amateur radio. Dots and dashes. Long and short flashes." His gaze never left the sky. "That's exactly what this is. Blink, 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 blink." A pause that felt deliberate. "What's it saying?" Rowan asked. Theo exhaled through his nose. "It's slow. Give me a second." No one spoke. The fire burned lower, unfed. The cold crept inward, slipping beneath sleeves, crawling up Rowan's spine. He became acutely aware of the silence pressing in around them. No insects buzzed. No distant calls echoed. Even the wind had abandoned the trees, leaving the forest suspended in an unnatural stillness. The pattern repeated. Theo mouthed numbers silently, fingers twitching as if tapping an invisible transmitter. "D," he murmured. "Oh." Elisa's arms folded tightly across her chest. "Say it out loud," she whispered. "Please." "DONT," Theo said. The words settled over the campsite like falling ash. "Don't what?" Rowan asked. The stars blinked again. Blink, 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 blink. Theo swallowed hard. "LOOK." Rowan's breath caught. The word felt personal, accusatory. He became suddenly aware of the act of seeing, of how exposed they were beneath the open sky. "This is ridiculous," Elise said, standing too quickly. Her movement sent shadows surging across the clearing. "We're exhausted. Our brains are inventing patterns." "Then why does it keep spelling words?" Theo asked quietly. The stars answered. Blink, blink, blink. A longer flash, then darkness that lingered just a beat too long. Theo's voice trembled. "ITSCES." The forest shifted. Not loudly, not distinctly, but as a whole, branches creaking, leaves brushing bark, something stepping and then stopping. Rowan felt the space between the trees deepen, the darkness layering itself, as though the forest had suddenly gained depth. "Elise," Rowan said. "Don't." She froze, one hand on her tent zipper. "What?" "Just don't turn away from the sky," Theo said. She scoffed weakly. "From what?" The next message came slower, heavier. Blink, blink, blink. Blink, blink, blink. Theo closed his eyes briefly. Here. Rowan's scalp prickled. The sense of being observed intensified, like pressure against his skin. "Here where?" Elise demanded, but she hadn't moved. The answer followed. Blink, 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 blink. Theo's shoulders sagged. "You?" The silence that followed felt absolute. Even the embers seemed to dim, their glow muted. Rowan felt it then, attention, vast and focused, pressing down from above, as if something incomprehensibly distant had adjusted its gaze and found them centered within it. "This can't be happening," Elise whispered. Theo nodded faintly. "But it is." The pattern changed. Faster now. More complex. Rowan realized with a creeping dread that the blinking was spreading, connecting distant stars into something larger, something structured. A message no longer confined to a single cluster. Theo shook his head, panic creeping into his expression. "It's not just spelling anymore," he said. "It's building." A rustle sounded closer this time. Rowan's heart pounded. He resisted the urge to turn, certain that if he looked into the trees, he would find something standing just beyond the firelight. "Maybe we should answer it," Elise said suddenly. Rowan stared at her. "What?" "If it's communication," she insisted, voice tight, "then maybe it expects a response." "With what?" Theo asked. She grabbed her headlamp. "Light. That's all we have." Before either of them could stop her, she flicked it on and aimed the beam skyward. The light cut a stark white line into the darkness. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the stars went out. All of them. The sky emptied itself of light in an instant, leaving a blackness so complete Rowan felt disoriented, as if the ground had tilted beneath him. He gasped. The fire flared once, then collapsed into glowing coals. In the darkness, new lights appeared, not above, but around them. Small points ignited at the forest's edge, between trunks, behind branches, encircling the campsite in a vast, silent ring. They blinked. Long, short, long. Theo's voice broke as he translated, the final realization settling into place. WEARELOOKING The trees around their tent formed a perfect circle overnight. Lena realized it before she fully woke. The way the mind registers wrongness before it finds language. The forest felt closer. Not louder, if anything quieter, but nearer, as though the space had tightened while they slept. Cold air pressed against her cheeks when she unzipped the tent, carrying the smell of damp soil and leaf rot. Her breath fogged and drifted sideways, caught by a draft that hadn't been there the night before. She stepped out and stopped. The clearing was gone, where the ground had opened loosely around their campsite. Irregular, forgiving, scattered with ferns and fallen branches, there was now order. Trees stood at equal distances from one another, trunks straight and pale in the thin morning light, their bases sunk into the earth at identical intervals. They curved around the tent in a flawless ring, a geometry so clean it felt imposed rather than grown. "Cal?" she said quietly at first, then louder. "Cal, Owen." The forest did not answer. No insects, no wind. Even the birds were absent. The air emptied of sound as if the morning had been paused. Cal emerged next, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He took 2 steps, then froze. "No," he said, and laughed once, breathless. "No way." Owen followed, taller, slower, scanning the perimeter with the careful attention of someone who liked to believe in maps and explanations. He said nothing at first. He walked the circumference, boots sinking slightly into the dark, wet soil. The ground smelled freshly turned. It's a circle, Lena said. Saying it out loud made her chest tighten. It wasn't like this last night. Cal shook his head. We'd have noticed. You can't just miss this. They stood together in the center, the tent between them like a blindfolded witness. Shadows leaned inward from the trunks, long and evenly spaced. The light beyond the circle looked thinner, filtered, as though the forest outside had stepped back to watch. Owen crouched, touching the earth at the base of one tree. His fingers came away black and damp. No broken branches, he said. No drag marks. Nothing snapped or bent. So what? Cal said. They walked here. Lena flinched. The word felt wrong in her mouth, too close to intention. She walked to the nearest trunk. Up close, the bark was unfamiliar. Smoother than the surrounding trees, faintly ridged in a repeating pattern that made her think of fingerprints. She pressed her palm against it. The surface was cold, colder than the morning air, and she had the uneasy sense that the chill was moving into her skin rather than the other way around. Owen, she said, these aren't the same trees. He looked up sharply. What do you mean? I mean, she gestured helplessly. I remember a split trunk here, and a dead pine leaning to the west. None of these are right. Cal turned slowly, counting under his breath. There are more of them, he said. I'm pretty sure there are more. They fell silent again. The stillness pressed in, dense enough to hear their own heartbeats. Somewhere far off, a single bird called, then cut itself short. The sound clipped as if something had closed a door. Owen stood and completed the circle, pacing it carefully, measuring steps. When he returned, his face had gone pale. They're equidistant, he said. Almost exactly. Lena's stomach dropped. That's not how forests work. No, Owen agreed. That's not how anything works. They tried to find a gap. There wasn't one. The ring was unbroken, each trunk precisely placed. The spacing so consistent it made her eyes ache. Looking at it too long produced a strange effect, as if the circle were both enclosing them and defining them, turning the campsite into a center point. Cal laughed again, sharper this time. Okay, so what, we sleepwalked and planted a forest? Stop, Lena said. Her voice sounded thin. Owen knelt again, this time tracing something in the soil. There are marks, he said. Here, and here. Lena crouched beside him. The ground bore shallow grooves, arcs pressed into the earth, overlapping slightly, all following the same curve. Not footprints, not tracks, lines drawn with care. Like a diagram, Cal said. Like a boundary, Lena corrected. The air inside the circle felt different now that she was aware of it. Heavier, faintly metallic, carrying a low, almost imperceptible pressure. She became aware of the sound of leaves far beyond the ring, a distant rustling that never came closer, as if the rest of the forest had resumed breathing while this space remained held. We should leave, Cal said. Now. Owen hesitated. Through where? They all looked at the trees again. Up close, the spaces between them seemed narrower than before, the shadows deeper, stitched together. Lena imagined stepping through and felt an irrational certainty that the circle would not open for her, that the geometry would simply tighten. She backed away, nearly tripping over a root that hadn't been there the night before. There, she said suddenly. Look. At the center of the circle, where the tense shadow fell, the ground was marked differently. The soil there was smoothed, tamped down into a shallow disc. At its heart lay a single object, a feather, pale and intact, placed with deliberate care. No, Cal whispered. Nope, I don't like that. Owen swallowed. That wasn't here last night. Lena stared at the feather. The unease sharpened into something colder, more specific. This isn't random, she said. It's arranged. The word chosen surfaced unbidden, and she hated herself for thinking it. They began to notice more. Each tree bore a scar at chest height, a shallow notch facing inward. When Lena stood at the center and turned slowly, the marks aligned, forming a continuous ring of pale wounds, all oriented toward them. Surveillance, she thought, or participation. The silence deepened. The light shifted, shadows inching inward with the slow confidence of a closing hand. Lena felt a prickling along her spine, the unmistakable sensation of being watched, not from outside the circle, but from within it, from the space they occupied. "Do you feel that?" Kel asked, voice barely above a breath. Owen nodded. "Like we're late." Lena's gaze dropped to the smoothed earth again. For a moment she imagined lying there, fitting into the circle the way the trees did, the geometry finally complete. A sound stirred then. Not footsteps, not speech, but a low creak, like wood adjusting under pressure. The trees leaned, just slightly, their shadows overlapping at the center. Lena took a step back, then another. The ground beneath her foot gave, settling into a shallow depression that matched the others. The circle, she realized, was not finished, and whatever watched from within it was still deciding where they belonged.